first encounter with martial arts will seem very strange for a person not familiar with them. People wearing weird things, barefoot, brandishing long wooden sticks, and a lot of shouting. All that is the modern martial art that descended from traditional samurai swordsmanship known as Kendo. In Generation UA, Ukrainian samurai will tell how to find one's way with a sword in their hands. A sword that protects, not one that attacks. The samurai of ancient Japan honed their swordsmanship. They developed and perfected their martial arts skills, and the sword became sacred for the Japanese samurai. Indeed, the sword became the soul of the samurai. This is how the swordsmanship cult appeared. When sword ownership was prohibited during the Meiji era, martial arts retreated into the shadows. But at the same time, many people continued practicing what eventually resulted in the creation of the All-Japanese Kendo Federation in the mid-20th century. Kendo came to Ukraine in 2000. With the arrival of a Japanese sensei, a large seminar was held in Kiev, after which 3 groups were formed in Kiev, Kharkiv and Donetsk. The art of Kendo began developing in other regions of Ukraine. Today, there are Kendo centers in most regions of the country. In western Ukraine, there are centers in Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk and Ternopil. There are also centers in the Kiev, Cherkasy, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv and Mykolaiv Oblast, and in most regional centers. I think Kendo is not very popular among the youth in Ukraine because it is not popularized, but there are prospects. A lot of young people around the world practice Kendo. It's just that not many know about it in our country. I've been practicing it for 4 years so far. I don't know what I was looking for. I just found out about it from a movie. It was either X-Men or Wolverine. I was just interested in it, and then discovered that it exists in real life. So I started training and really got into it. It's difficult to explain what exactly hooked me in Kendo. In the very beginning, nothing interesting happens. You just wave the shinai around and do nothing else. It becomes interesting later, when you get to fencing after you've learned some skills and moves. Kendo somewhat reminds me of chess. The interaction with your opponent is interesting, and that is most likely what is so fascinating and gripping about this unique form of martial art. I found out about Kendo from my friends 6 years ago. I looked it up on the internet, found a Kendo group in Kharkiv, called them, and our conversation went like this. Hello, I'd like to find out what this is. Can I come and see for myself? So I went there and I stayed. I was impressed when they started the warm-up, when they stood in a circle and started going through everything synchronously. There was also a girl with a very sonorous voice. That was it, I stayed with them. I laughed and said that I would probably stay with them. There are not many women engaged in Kendo, but when they stay, they usually become strong Kendo practitioners. Previously, I practiced Aikido for 7 years, since I was a child and until the 10th grade. When I went to Kharkiv to study at the university, I couldn't find an Aikido section. When I was googling that stuff up, I stumbled upon Kendo and decided to give it a try. It is much more dynamic and closer to sports. Aikido is closer to gymnastics. It is a martial art, but a more fluid one. There are more fast blows, heavier loads, it's more interesting and fun, and the people are very pleasant. I never attained higher than third place in personal championships, but I got first place many times in team championships, and I have been a member of the national team of Ukraine in Kendo since 2012. I believe that the differences are due to the fact that it is primarily a philosophy for the Japanese, and they have been exposed to it since their childhood. Therefore, they have their own worldview that distinguishes them from us. Japanese Kendo is of course different from Ukrainian Kendo. Our philosophy is slightly different and not connected with Japanese martial arts. It is in their tradition to practice Kendo from a young age, so they begin studying and practicing it right from their early childhood. There is a philosophy in Kendo, but it is not that important for beginners and intermediates, because its profound philosophy is only revealed at higher levels. Kendo equipment descended from traditional Japanese armor and includes torso protective, do, head protection, men, wrist guards, kote, and thigh protection, tare. Kendoka use shinai, which is meant to represent the katana or bokken. In leg vernacular, this is a wooden sword. There are 10 dan in Kendo, and before them come the Q, which are an intermediate grade for beginners. They start from 6 Q and advance to first Q. After that is the first dan, then the second dan, and so on. At the moment, there is no 10 dan level in the world. 8 dan is the maximum level, but basically it takes a person's entire lifetime to reach the 8 dan. Advancing to every grade requires passing an examination. A panel of 3 to 5 judges is usually present, who all have a dan. To advance to second dan, several 5-dan kendoka must be present. We invite them from Europe and Japan. I'm at the second dan level, which is considered the beginning one, compared with the Japanese and Europeans. I remember my first training session. I practiced Aikido before that. There people usually come wearing sport outfits, but I already had everything, so I just began training. I practiced several elements in Aikido, so it was very easy for me to get up to speed. I don't think anyone can achieve high results in Kendo. Physical attributes and persistence play a big role. I think it is predetermined for every person from birth what they're going to be better at. Some are better at sports, some with math, and some in both fields. So if a person is not attuned to sports, Kendo will be more difficult for them, and they're not likely to achieve a lot. My only personal goal is to improve my Kendo. I've been training 3 times a week for 2 hours. When I just started, I worked out a lot on my own, because initially working with a partner is less important than getting the basics right, like movement, hand moves, and physical training. After my first training session, I could not even lift my arms. I did not understand anything at first, and it was all so strange. The only thing I remember is that I could not even drink any water that time because I could not lift my arms. Individual training is also important, but it has moved into the background because working in pairs is extremely important now to feel the opponent, to feel what they do and what I have to do to defend myself. I'm the 3rd dan level. I passed the examination this year. I trained a lot for that. It took me 5 years to advance that far. 3rd dan is roughly equal to a master of sports as a point of reference. The workouts were intense and sometimes even brutal. When I just started practicing Kendo, people did not have a good understanding of what it was, but they really wanted to find out. So they hit very hard and screamed very loud. That was my first impression. But there were very cheerful and good-natured people. especially after the training session ended. Kendo training traditionally begins with a meditation. When all fighters sit down in the meditation position, let go of all their thoughts and concentrate on training. Then there are warm-ups, practice of the main techniques, and duels. There are two main technique forms in Kendo: the offensive, shikake waza, and defensive, oji waza. Studying those techniques is aimed at an athlete being focused and able to deliver an accurate strike or blow called ippon, for which they earn a scoreable point. When a beginner comes, they are not given armor. They train without armor for the first month. After they are given armor, the hardest part begins, for me personally, because the physical load increases. They have to wear 7 kilograms of equipment, and there are also the constant calluses on the hands and feet, because we train barefoot. Since I'm tall, it's easier for me to hit the head and hands, but very difficult to hit the torso, because that is short distance fighting, which so far I found to be more difficult. There are all kinds of difficulties. It's hard to learn to control your body, and it's very hard to control your psyche. By the way, a master is a person who can regulate their psycho-emotional state on their own. There were moments when I wanted to give up on it, but these moments didn't last long. Then you think that is interesting, that you want to achieve mastery and find out what that is. The most difficult thing was probably the movement, that is moving the feet. There is the fumikomiyashi in Kendo, which is a jump. As it turned out, it's quite difficult to push off with just one leg, while maintaining the correct vertical position. Although Kendo is not an Olympic sport, there are World and Europe Championships. There are also the regular Kendo Championships that are held in Ukraine, as well as international tournaments like the Kharkiv Cup, national tournaments, and seminars in Dnipro and Lviv. I was very anxious during my first competitions because I wondered how competitions are usually held. People are broken up into groups of 3. So I had been practicing for just 2 months before my first competition, which was held a day before my examination. And it just so happened that I was put in a group with those who were supposed to be my examiners in the 2nd and 3rd dan levels. They knocked me out in 5 seconds, so I just sat down and calmly watched the rest of the competition, which was very useful for me. My feelings at competitions for me personally are always the same. The emotions in the first competition were the same as those in the last one. It is fear, and I feel uneasy before a fight. But then I perform Sonkyo before the combat. I get up after that, and the fight begins. Then the fear inside me goes away, and I simply focus on trying to win. I don't remember my first competition at all, because it was very unusual. Although, wait a second, I do remember the moment when I scored a hit. There was nothing else, I just executed a precise, powerful strike, and the judges raised their flags. It is always scary, it's scary every time. Well, you can be afraid, but you also have to take action. Very few people in Ukraine practice Kendo, no more than 100. So we'll try to stay in touch on a regular basis, especially those who've been practicing this fascinating and challenging martial art of Kendo for a long time.